Chapter 12, Pathology Introduction. Let's summarize the previous chapters. We understand that as we develop from emotion, and we develop feelings and thoughts. From them, springs behavior. Along the way, we develop an ability to experience and to store experiences. Experiences are more than memory, they are a composite of what one felt, what we learnt, and what we thought. We are choosing possibilities. Part of them are censored, daydreams. Non-chosen possibilities may be stored as fantasies. By dreaming, we integrate our recent experiences with our previous experiences. Almost everything we have done as we have developed has been to enhance survival. One of the amazing properties that feelings have is they are much faster than thoughts. We act faster to a feeling than a thought. Feelings and emotions are not interchangeable. Emotions and subconscious thought, in my opinion, are the equivalent of wave and particle explanations of the same thing. One of the main proponents I am making is that as emotions and this subconscious thought evolve, they behave as if they are two different entities. They most certainly are not, it is just convenient for us to think of them that way. We define two more critical concepts, both of which many people are going to argue with. The first concept is the idea of the automatic everything. By this, I mean that in our conscious world, we have a part of which we are aware and a part of which we are not aware. I claim that we are virtually sitting in a control center, whereby most of the actions are being done automatically, and we are only aware of and consciously controlling very little of what we are doing. This concept is just that, it is a concept. It is a way of describing something so it can be conceptualized. I can imagine most of you groaning when you read that sentence. So, let's go back to the concept. We are guiding our spaceship through time and space behind a curtain which is hiding all the background information from us. Below us is the motor or engine that contains the warehouses of all our experiences. I call it the engine because it is my belief that what we have experienced is what we expect, and what we expect will determine where we believe and think we are heading. I know that this will confound a lot of you and many of you will disagree. I firmly believe we are products of our experiences. Our experiences mold our expectations, and our expectations mold our behavior and desires. We introduced another important concept, and this concept is that of the survival of the fittest thoughts, daydreams and censorship. In the curtain behind us where things are happening that we are unaware of, there are two processes going on, not just one. The first process is that of matching and recalling. By this, I mean we match what we have just perceived with what we have recalled as being similar to this situation. On the other hand, we have another process going on, which is that of the evolution of the fittest. We can picture this very simply when we think of thoughts as being like buds on a tree. There are many buds, generally speaking, but one will be the predominant one. For the sake of argument, the rest of the buds will wither and die, be stored as fantasies or put behind a firewall and become daydreams. The censor is the belief system we acquire as we interact. Somewhere is an innate sense of right and wrong. How does this happen? We have suggested, and I hope you have accepted, that this process is also happening in the not aware part of your consciousness. If you think carefully, you may ask yourself, why did I do this? We usually come up with the alternatives and dismiss them. This process of coming up with alternatives and dismissing them is done in the automatic everything, behind the curtain so to speak. Like in a tree, the buds can become twigs and branches, accepted uncontested structures with a semblance of permanence. Emotions that appear behind the curtain are now feelings. The more we mature, we become more capable of being able to make our emotional response part of the automatic everything. We make choices of how we feel. They are based on experience, expectations and beliefs, and they are so often unquestioned. Often, like thoughts, they are unnoticed. As an example, think of how you felt the last time you were angry or sad. In many cases you will answer, well, I could have felt something else, but. It is as if there was a choice being made behind the curtains. Of course, it's not as sophisticated and intricate as the algorithms we use in thinking. But, it is there nevertheless. Finally, we can discuss behavior. As we grow older, behavior becomes more and more an expression of who and to what we belong and identify with. We will choose our behavior in a similar manner. The choice is more complicated because we have to consider what others expect and what you expect. Of course, the role of good and bad comes into play. Although social aspects and all other aspects of belonging to something affect mainly our behavior, they do affect in a lesser extent the way we think and the way we feel. This is particularly more evident as we get older and seemingly more sophisticated. We remember that the factors influencing our behavior are beliefs, those which are truly ours, and mostly, those which we share and accept in order to belong. For me, one of the most fascinating aspects is how we develop. Let's face it, we somehow become part of an intricate social and familial system when we started off as being a single cell. Most of the organogenesis takes place whilst we are still protected in the womb. Nevertheless, even on birth, we undergo amazing changes or we eventually die. The most amazing of these changes is separation, individuation, and how we learn, after struggling to be an individual, to unite with another individual and provide the environment to be a good parent. Often when examining a patient, I am asked to write a summary. There are more than a few times when I commented, it would be much easier to write a list of what is right than what is wrong. This might sound contrite, and it probably is. But, when you consider what is happening as we develop, what an imprecise process becomes such an amazing biological piece of work, it is truly amazing that much more does not go wrong. I suppose it would be easy and logical if we were to go through each stage of development and suggest what can go wrong and how we call this as an illness or abnormality. I decided not to do this. I think it's impractical. If I were talking to David now, I would be saying to him, well, mate, the fun's over, let's get down to business. After all, psychiatry is about pathology and trying to treat it. As an aside, I would say that I wish it was more than that, and psychiatry should be dealing with what I think is eminently possible to do, namely prevention. If David asked me why prevention is a forgotten backstream, I'd give my well-worn diatribe. It consists of the unholy and ungodly trinity of the profit-driven pharmaceutical companies, the cost-containing providers, and our weak-willed professional brethren. He'd understand. Almost all Leeds Jews are innately socialist, for good reason, I may add. And, dear reader, I am neither ashamed nor bent enough to hide my views from you. Factor it as you will and must. So, I have decided to present the pathologies in a more acceptable and non-provocative way. I think it makes explanations more practical, and if I can make the explanations fit into the pathologies, we gain a certain amount of respectability and possible acceptability. I think it's genuine to do this because there are certain things in psychiatry that should be changed. I am sure you understand what they are. I am saying that when we go through pathology and treatment, not to mention service systems, I will recommend change. Some of what I say will be opposed. I can see David smiling. The Leeds Jewish community did more than support Leeds United. We all tend to have bloody big gobs, or as they'd say back on the terraces at our beloved Leeds United home ground, Elland Road, ye got a reet gob on ye there, lad. And so, we have. So, with no more apologies, in the next chapter I will discuss the pathology of the illness through which treatment is the cornerstone of all that is psychiatry. We are going to discuss the pathology of the psychoses.